Welcome to SmokeHouseStudios.net. The in-studio broadcast feed is now live.
Warning. This show is about the return of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. If you are easily offended by the truth, then you need to keep listening. His return is drawing near.
SmokeHouseStudios.net. The Front Porch Show. A unique blend of current events and what they might mean. Humbly seen through the eyes of God's Word, the Bible, in an old school front porch discussion with occasional guests, your input, and a guiding hand through Christ. Broadcasting from atop the front porch, it's SmokeHouseStudios.net's The Front Porch Show. Now, carefully blending more smoke goodness in each and every soundbite, your host, Smokehouse.
Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be across the globe and across the United States. Welcome in, everybody, to SmokeHouseStudios.net Front Porch Show. March the 2nd, 2019, and messages are coming in. People have the show on. Hello, Sister Elizabeth. Glad to have you. So anyway, we've got a lot to discuss tonight. We have Brother Chuck back in studio with us this week. Hello, Chuck.
How's it going, man?
Hey, we missed you last week.
Yeah, I missed being here. You know, there was just such crazy weather going on. I decided to stay home with my family just to make sure, in case anything touched down, that we can have some direction of where to go. So thankfully that didn't happen.
Well, did you have any damage out your way?
You know, I think there was some wind damage, you know, some tree branches and stuff, but it wasn't as bad as they were anticipating. I think there was some type of a big storm coming pretty close. It was either in Hickman County or somewhere close to it in Dixon. They were kind of watching it, and there was like a tornado like warning. It was like a, you know, prepare to take cover or take cover. So I think it was pretty close to us.
Yeah, we were live on the air. We were keeping tabs on everything, and it was rolling in behind us as we were following, and we had 3 mountains collapse. Now, while we were live on air, I think it was East Tennessee and the Gorge had collapsed, and then the next day or that night after the show, the mountain up here on Interstate 24 collapsed.
Yeah, I heard about that.
So it was just like, wow, man, the Lord's not sending the message. And we said it.
Yeah.
Once this abortion junk went full bore, what do you think God was going to do? You know, sit back and do nothing?
He's got some harsh words for people who harm children. So
yeah, he does.
Yeah, you know, and the more you see that happening in these different states, you know, these people saying, "Oh, well," I think I was reading that article heading. It was talking about, you know, when babies if they survive the abortion thing, that they're going to like drown them. That one abortion provider, or that they would just flush them.
Yeah,
and I was like, man, just the heartless callousness,
lawlessness,
exactly, where they just don't even care about life at all.
And we've got that clip we're going to share too. It's tragic, man. I mean, just unbelievable. But the reason being is because we've been talking about this, that Christ did not come to bring peace. He came to bring a sword.
Right.
And that is to divide the good from the evil.
Right.
You know, it's not political.
Right.
It is evil on one side and good on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And so this kind of extends the definition of why we're seeing what we're seeing, because we're seeing that division,
right,
of good versus evil.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's not a political thing. You know, the politicians have tried to hijack, you know, truth, lies. You know, they want to be virtue signals. You know, they want to act like they're the ones doing what's right, but really, you know, and like own the truth. Like, oh, well, that this truth belongs to us, and that truth, you know, is not even a truth, but they're saying it's a truth that belongs to them, you know, because the Democrats can't have the truth, and then the Republicans, you know, the Democrats are like, Republicans can't have the truth, it belongs to us. And it's like, no.
And then all the evil is being done. They're projecting it onto the Republicans.
Right.
And people are waking up to this.
Yeah.
And so, Chuck, tonight's program is titled Purim. Now, friends, we're going to get through this fairly quickly because we're going to lay the groundwork on some things that will blow your mind. We cover Purim quite a bit each time Purim rolls around. And here we are, March the 2nd, Purim being the 20th and the 21st of March. And there are some interesting things that are happening. Now, we have been talking about, Chuck, you weren't here last week, but we have been talking about this peace deal. We do not know what is in this peace deal yet, but little nuggets are trickling out. And the latest information, Jared Kushner, right now, as we speak, he's over in Israel working and brokering this peace deal. Now, it has been leaked that part of this peace deal, there could be a temple build in the peace deal, and it appears that they're going to have to remove the wall that separates, Israelis and the Palestinians.
Right.
And the Lord apparently is not happy with that because this week a massive storm has hit Israel. And a flash flood came down and took out a section of this wall. Like maybe a reminder, maybe a warning, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then we find out that Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, has been indicted this week on bribery. And we know the deep state, Chuck, of Israel is trying to unseat Netanyahu, just like our deep state is trying to unseat Trump. Now, that should, like you had said, how the Democrats are projecting things on Republicans or the other side.
Yeah.
That makes me think, okay, if they're trying to unseat Netanyahu, he's got to be a good guy.
Right.
Because he is not wanting to give up any land in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And their deep state wants this peace deal.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have Purim coming up. March the 20th and 21st. What exactly is Purim? Let me give you a quick synopsis of what Purim is. If you go into the book of Esther and you read the entire book of Esther, what this is we have a man and a woman. The characters in this, Esther and her uncle Mordecai, they are in Israel and they exile out of Israel because of the things that were going on in Israel, and they go into Persia. Now, Persia hates the Jews, okay? So, as they get into Persia, Mordecai tells Esther, look, do not tell anyone that you're a Jew. Do not tell anyone that we are Jewish. Let's just kind of go here and do our deal and just try to fit in. Let's not bring any attention to ourselves. But as she got there, the king of Persia took a liking to Esther because she was beautiful. And so he wanted her to be his wife. So he takes Esther in. Well, Mordecai's like, Esther, whatever you do, girl, don't tell the king that you're a Jew.
Right.
Now, the king had his top man of the army. And this man's name was Haman. And Haman hated the Jews. And Haman was just so powerful that as he would walk down the street, he would have people bow at his feet.
Yeah.
And he had 10 warriors, 10 sons that were underneath him. Okay. So Mordecai didn't put up with Haman's pride. Okay?
He wouldn't bow.
He would not bow. And Haman's like...
Haman did not like that.
That's right. He's like, what's up, man? And so Mordecai's like, I'm not going to bow to you, man. Well, Haman found out that he was Jewish, and so they went off talking about, man, we're going to take care of the Jews.
Yeah.
All right, well, Mordecai overheard this, that the Jews were going to be sought after, so he got message to Esther and said, okay, Esther, I know I told you not to say anything about us being Jewish, but under the circumstance now, you are in a place to where you can do something for our people. And regardless of what the outcome will be, you're going to have to tell the king that you're Jewish. And then you're going to have to explain to him why you tell him that you're Jewish and plead for the Jewish people, because Haman is fixing to go after the Jewish people.
Yeah, genocide.
Yeah, genocide. So Esther then reveals herself to the king that she is a Jew, but he was so smitten by her, it didn't really bother him.
Yeah, because if you know what happens when you come to the king uninvited.
Right. Get your head cut
exactly.
off.
So that she was like, oh, gosh.
Yeah. And she prayed and fasted for 3 days before she did this, but she took on the strength and did it, is what we're getting at. And so the king is like, okay, well, you're Jewish. And she's like, well, I need to plead for my people because there is someone here who is going to go and kill my people. Well, right before this took place, Haman had come into the king of Persia and said, hey, man, I want your permission to go after this group of people. And the king says, okay, cool, go after them. So Haman goes back home with his 10 sons, and they start building gallows to hang the Jews on. Mm-hmm. Okay, so while Haman is off building the gallows to hang the Jews, this is when Esther reveals herself to the king. And she says, I need to plead the lives of my people because there is someone here that wants to eradicate them. And the king, he said, well, who is this person? And she said, this person is Haman. I mean, there's a process she went through. She had a banquet and then, but the gist of it is she said, it's Haman. Mm-hmm. And so the king is like, oh, really? So then the king commanded that Haman and his 10 sons be killed. And they were hung on the very gallows that they had built for the Jewish people. That's important. Hang on to that. And then the king came back to Esther and the Jewish people there and said, look, I decree on this day that this be the day of Purim, for purity. And he gave permission to the Jewish people to set out on Purim and annihilate their entire enemy.
Wow.
And it was a decree that was written, and it was written to be forever, to be remembered and celebrated every single year from that point forward. And that's what happened. They went out under Purim, and they went out and they destroyed their enemy, and every year Israel has celebrated Purim. So that is what Purim is the Israel's right to go and annihilate their enemy. That is a very important holiday or decree that was given for the Jewish people. Now, Israel still celebrates Purim today, every year. We remember back, 2015, when Netanyahu was asked to come and speak in front of our Congress by John Bonner.
Yeah, I remember that. And
to discuss this Iranian deal that Obama was fixing to do with Iran. And Netanyahu came at the 1st of March, because that year it was like March 3rd, March 4th. He came on the very day of Purim to make this speech about Iran, about the modern-day Persia, because that's where the modern-day Persia was then, is today where Iran is.
Yeah.
And so when Netanyahu came to speak in 2015, he presented John Boehner a gift, and it was a scroll of the book of Esther.
Wow.
And then Netanyahu stood up in front of our Congress to plead his case for this deal on the day of Purim and told our Congress the story of Esther and how they still recognize it today, and they have the right to defeat their enemies.
Wow.
And they are not going to put up with what Iran is wanting to do. Now that you understand what Purim is and how it came to be, let's go back and let's look at some parallels, because I believe what we are seeing today happen, which we're going to get into all of these clips, is a parallel to what happened in the book of Esther that we are seeing today. And here's why. In Revelation 13, we know there is coming an Antichrist. When the beast rise, the Antichrist will rise out of this beast, and he will be the one to control the world, right? Well, in Esther 3, chapter 1, we know that was Haman who was going to rise out of that and slaughter the Jewish people. In Revelations 12:3, we know that there's going to be 7 heads on the dragon. There's going to be 7 heads on this beast. And interestingly enough, there were 7 princes in Persia during the story of Esther.
Oh, wow.
In Revelation 17:12, there were 10 kings. There's going to be 10 kings that come with the Antichrist. Well, Haman had 10 sons. Now, in Revelations 11:12, there was a 7-year tribulation that we are going to have to endure. And this king, this Persian king in Esther's day, that was his 7th reign. Okay, keep just
recognizing a pattern here.
Yeah. In Revelations 12:17, we find out that there is a plot by the Antichrist that's going to come after and destroy the Jews and the Christians. And here we see back in Esther that Haman wanted to go after and kill the Jewish people. And then in Revelations 20, we find that there is going to be a beheading of the righteous, which they're going to have their heads cut off naturally, but a lot of them be hung, or it's a neck issue here. And then we go back to Esther, and Haman wanted to hang the Jews. So what about these 10 sons of Haman? They were listed in Esther chapter 9, 7 through 9. Now, follow me very close. We know right now that the beast system, these satanic, pedophilic elite that we are dealing with, this spirit of Satan in this spiritual battle, we have to call it what it is.
That's right.
They operate on the ancient Babylonian method of gematria. If you're not sure what gematria is, basically it is a letter that has a corresponding number, like A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, okay? And they speak in code via these numbers with the words that they use and the letters that they use, okay? Don't have time to explain it in any more depth than that, but that's how Satan operates. And so we're going to look at a few things here. The 10 sons of Haman in Esther 9, 7 through 9, let's look at their names. Because the Hebrew translation, now, when you translate something from the Old Testament, you have to translate it in Hebrew. If you're going to translate something from the New Testament, you translate it out of the Greek. So since we're looking at the Old Testament here, we need to translate out of Hebrew. The first name, the 7th name, and the 10th name, his 10 sons, the first son's name, the 7th son's name, and the 10th son's name, there are 3 Hebrew letters that are repetitive. Now, you can go back in Esther 9, 7 through 9, and you can see these names, but the first, 7th, and 10th, each name, they have 3 Hebrew letters that are repetitive. One is Tav, the other is Shiv, and the third letter is Sion. So we have Tav, Shiv, and Sion. So we go and we look at these Hebrew letters in gematria, the number that's added to those 3 letters. And it adds up to the number 1946. So we take those 3 letters, add them up, they come out to 1946. And let's go back and let's look at 1946. What happened back in 1946? Interestingly enough, in 1946, there were 11 Nazis to be hung for their war crimes against the Jews during the war. Right before they were hung, one of them committed suicide. And 10, the other 10, they were hung.
Wow.
Now, is this a clue? Is this coincidence? Is this a clue that the three Hebrew letters that are totaling 1946, and we had 10 Nazis hung in 1946?
Interesting.
Just something
Yeah.
to ponder. And then we move into the Gulf War in the 90s. When Saddam Hussein, the first Bush, when we went to war, Saddam Hussein, he fired Scud missiles into Israel. He fired 39 Scud missiles that landed in Israel, actually. And when the 39th one hit, there was a rabbi there that said, now the war is going to be over. And the Jewish people are like, well, how do you know this? He said that 39 is the number of chastisement.
Yeah, like 39 times, the 39 whips on Jesus' back.
Exactly. I was talking to Brother Pat on the phone today, and that's exactly what he asked. He's like, is that 39? Because if, say that again.
Yeah, that's how many whips Jesus received.
Right.
39 times, 39 lashings.
Right. And so only 39 missiles hit, and this rabbi said because 39 is the number of chastisement. And he's like, we have been chastised here, so the war is going to end. And surprisingly enough, that after that 39th missile, the war ended.
Wow.
Okay. Now, the war ended on Purim that year. That is when it ended, was on... Uh-oh. I didn't... Sister Cheryl said there are no coincidences. That's right.
That's right.
I didn't turn my dinger off.
That's the thing with the Jewish, when you're talking about the different numbers, with, in our culture, we, it's, to my knowledge, it's just like a coincidence. Like we look at it as a coincidence. We don't read numbers like they do. Or I think if you think about it, like, that God communicates a certain way and he'll change it from time to time as he sees fit to whatever he needs to accomplish. But overall, I think he operates very similarly, from generation to generation and in trying to talk to us, especially like you said, through numbers and different things. I wonder, that'd be interesting to see America and look at the things that have happened and look at different numbers, kind of like how we're doing with this, to see if God may even be trying to talk to us in certain ways too. I know I think we kind of touch on little stuff, from time to time of how that might be the Lord speaking to us or just speaking, internationally doing certain things and stuff. But I think that'd be interesting to do an American thing too. So
yeah, it really would.
I just food for thought. I don't want to derail us from what we're talking about.
You didn't derail us, because that is a good point, because what we're going to finish up with here is has to do with us looking at America at numbers and that very thing.
Okay.
It's
I'm not off base then.
No,
I'm not completely off
You're
base.
dead on, brother. So the war ended on Purim, friends. The Gulf War ended on the Purim anniversary that year.
Wow.
And then we have Bush 2, George W., that comes along. And we go back to war, with Iraq. And guess what anniversary that war started on? Purim.
Oh, wow.
When George W. went back to war.
Oh, that must just be a coincidence.
Right. Now, okay, let me say this before I go into this next part. The second war that Bush Jr. started, it started on Purim. Now, do you remember back when Trump came out and said he was going to open up the government? And he said, I'm going to give you 21 days to make a decision, or I'm going to call a national emergency.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then we talked on the show how Daniel was told to fast and pray for 21 days before God gave him the prophecy of the last days. And we showed a parallel there, or could there be a parallel between Trump giving the Democrats 21 days and then Daniel having to fast for 21 days before he received the prophecy of the last days. Okay, 21 is apparently an interesting number, because when Bush 2 went back to war on the anniversary of Purim over in Iraq, 21 days later after going to war, 21 days later is when we saw the footage on TV of them pulling down the statue of Saddam Hussein in Iraq.
Oh, wow.
It was 21 days after we went back to war that they were pulling down the statue of Saddam Hussein.
That's interesting.
So here we have another battle ensuing in the ancient Babylonian era. 21 days later than when the statues are pulled down, Daniel was given a prophecy 21 days after he had fasted and prayed. Okay? We see a similarity there. So we're going to now read Daniel chapter 10, verse 13, because I don't like to talk about Q on the program because we don't know if Q is real. We're looking at this through a biblical eye, but I would not be a proper watchman if Q happens to be legit and he has given a warning and I fail to share it with you.
That's right.
So I'm only sharing this with you as food for thought, that it's out there floating around and we need to pay attention.
When we just acknowledge, if we notice something that seems to be true, we're going to acknowledge it no matter what, because we're after truth. We're not here supporting any particular thing,
right? Unless
we see that it's aligning itself with the truth, then we'll quote it.
Right. So with that being said, interestingly enough, Brother Mike, he said 21 is the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Thank you, sir. That's very interesting. I did not know that. Q had put out a post the other day, and I cannot remember the day that it was, but he said basically T-minus 21 and counting. He's counting down the days. So if you go back to that post of the 21st, T-minus 21 and counting.
Yeah.
Then in America's time, date and all that runs us up to March the 19th. Israel is like 8 hours ahead of us. So our 19th will be their 20th. So T-minus 21 on the day that Q posted that is going to put it right at the beginning of Purim in Israel.
Wow.
I'm just laying this out here,
right,
folks. So when Q said 21 and counting, that's going to put us at Purim. And what are we seeing coming out of Iran, the modern day Persia, today? We see Iran and their minions and all around trying to encompass Israel.
Right.
They're threatening now. I mean, Iran is blatantly saying, we are going to blow you off. And the other day, they said they're going to nuke or bomb Tel Aviv and Haifa.
Right.
And Iran is getting serious. So, with all of that being said, now that you understand Purim, now that you understand that the Israelis still celebrate Purim, now that we have shared a few things, now I will give credit to Brother Perry Stone on this information that I have just shared with you. I didn't want to leave that out. He had an excellent layout, so I credit him for this. But now we see some historical events that took place over Purim, and Q has told us T-minus 21. And so when that T-minus 21 days ends, it'll put us right at the beginning of this year's Purim. And what is happening? Iran is threatening to take Israel. The Antichrist spirit, the globalist elite, Satan and his minions are trying to unseat Netanyahu, who is standing firm on the nation of Israel and not willing to budge an inch. And the deep state is trying to unseat our president, President Trump, who is not going to budge or move in any way. Now, he also said, Q, that there are big, 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 big things coming in March. So what could be coming in March? This peace deal is being brokered right now. Jared Kushner right now is in Israel brokering this peace deal. And God sends a flood to wash away part of that wall. that Israel had built to separate itself from the Palestinians as a warning, I think.
Yeah.
Coming up on the day of Purim, and we are in the countdown. I think Brother Pat and I, we talked, we may be 17 days now away.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, 17 days away. So, that being stated, Trump is over in North Korea, Chuck.
Right.
And he's brokering this peace deal with Kim Jong-un, making headway. Now, they didn't complete the deal that Trump wanted.
Right.
And Trump said he walked away.
Yeah.
But Reagan walked away from Reykjavik during that time as well. Okay? So, there's nothing wrong with walking away.
Well, I've done sales for years and years, and when people do a price that I don't like, I do the same thing. So I'm like, no, we can't agree to it. I just walk away, and usually you walk away and they go, oh, wait. Because they realize the ball's in your court, Okay, wait. I'll work with you. When you got something they want, but they don't want to give you way down here, you just walk away and you say, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, I did that.
And then they go, oh, I found the money.
Yeah.
That miraculously appeared in my wallet. Oh, I got $50 here in my pocket. Where'd that come from?
Well, I did that with that old Toyota out there in the driveway.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, he wanted $10,000 for it, brand new, and it was 94, and all it had was air conditioning. That was it. No radio. It don't even have a mirror on the passenger door, but they wanted $10,000 for it. And so I told him, I said, well, I can get that S10 over there for $9,700. I'll just go get the S10. See you later. And as I'm walking out the door, he's like, hey, I think we can do $9,700. I said, okay, well, hook me up, brother. And I'm glad he did, because it's got that R21 or that 21R motor in it.
22R.
That you can't kill,
Right.
So maybe that was the Lord's divine intervention there, okay?
Wise as a serpent,
Yeah, harmless as a dove.
That's right.
Amen, brother. Okay, friends, we have laid the foundation for you, and when we return, we're going to build the house on it. And we're going to run a bunch of things up your flagpole tonight to see if you salute. So you don't want to miss this broadcast. It's powerful. And I totally didn't even see this with the Purim deal. I'm glad I stumbled across this. So, hey, we're only human, folks.
That's right.
And when we come back, we got some serious prayer requests that have been sent in, and we'll get to those. But hey, God's on the throne, people. He's alive and well.
That's right.
And everything that we do from this point forward is going to determine our salvation. Repent. Give your life back to Jesus Christ. We'll be right back.
Smokehouse. To talk to Smokehouse, dial 641-552-9354. That number once again, 641-552-9354. And enter access code 252380, followed by the pound sign. Call in and join the show.
SmokehouseStudios.net. God is among us. The door to the ark is slamming shut.
1 Thessalonians 5:3. For when they shall say, peace and security, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape.
The borders of 1967, that will live in
peace and security.
The lesson of history is that peace and security do not come easily.
Peace and stability that people on all sides long for.
Two states for two peoples living side by side in peace and security is not a vague slogan, but a real necessity for the stability in the entire region.
Israel and Palestinians, they can live side by side in peace and security. This is our vision, and this is our commitment.
Of a new deal, peace and security and friendship.
My hopes and dreams for Israel are to live in peace and security.
Two states living side by side in peace and security. True security for all Israelis. We will also pursue peace between Israel and Lebanon.
In peace and security
Israel and Syria,
peace and security,
and a broader peace between Israel and its many neighbors. Must decide whether we are serious about peace and security, to recognize Israel's legitimacy and its right to exist in peace and security. That's how we will find new pathways to peace and security. That is the work that we must do.
In peace and security.
Peace and security and coexistence.
A movement towards peace. If we have this triangle, economy, security, and peace, then peace can succeed.
Our government is talking now about peace and security. Peace and security with Israel. Wake up, people.
That's right.
That's a really powerful clip.
Well, it is, especially with what we're seeing going on right now.
Just the scripture that talks about, they'll say peace and security, and then comes sudden destruction. It's like, wow.
And sudden destruction, there's a lot of things that we can see now where sudden destruction could be plausible.
Yeah.
From all kind of angles.
Yep.
So, friends, wow. Okay, we have some serious prayer requests that we need to ask for from everybody who is listening. My dad, he took a dive down the staircase yesterday afternoon, and he went head first down to the bottom platform at the bottom of the staircase and went through the floor.
Yeah.
And he has several broken bones and in a lot of pain. So pray for my dad for sure. I was on the phone with him when it happened. So,
wow.
I was probably 15, 20 miles from him. And I mean, the minute it all happened, Mom said he fell down the stairs. I'm yanking plugs and I'm hitting the road,
Yeah.
And we got him to the hospital. He's not as bad as we thought he was going to be. He's in a lot of pain, but he is at home. Please pray for a speedy recovery for my dad. And we need to pray for Joan Knight. And she's being taken to the hospital and going into ICU. And that is Sister Cheryl's son's future mother-in-law.
Mm.
And we also need to pray for Sister Julie down in Florida. She's a dear friend of, mine and Brother Pat's. And apparently she's been sick for about 3 days and been in bed. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, Joan, Julie, and my dad, Ron. If y'all could pray for those, I would greatly appreciate it.
That's right.
Now, getting back to this 21, let's see. Sister Cheryl had shared some dates with us on when that Q drop was dropped. And she said it was dropped on the 26th of February. And Q dropped the 21-day mark on the 26th of February. And so how many days would that be? There's 28 days in February, right? So that would be 2 days of February, and then we've got 20 days, so that's a total of 22 days for the 20th of our 20th.
Right.
But it's going to be 19 days, okay? No.
That's okay. We're all numberly challenged here.
Right.
Most everybody knows that.
You get the idea,
especially when it comes to dates.
Right. The end of the 20th. That's at Cheatham County. I got.
That's funny.
It's going. The end of the 21 countdown is going to be right there at the beginning of Purim. Okay, that's what we're getting at. But let's take another look at 21. So in Daniel, we find out that he had to fast for 21 days before he was given the vision. Let's move in Daniel real quick to the next 21 and take a look at this. It is in Daniel 10, chapter 13 through 15, or Daniel chapter 10, verse 13 through 15, that says, "But the prince of the Persian kingdom," where was this prince at? In the Persian kingdom. "But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Now this is Daniel talking here, saying that the prince resisted him or stopped him for 21 days because I was detained there with the king of Persia. Now I have come to explain that I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the future. So the king detained him for 21 days before he could tell the people what was going to happen to them in their future. He says, while he was saying this to me, I bowed with my face toward the ground and was speechless. And then one who looked like a man touched my lips, and I opened my mouth and began to speak. I said to the one standing before me, I am overcome with an anguish because of the vision, my Lord, and I am helpless. How can I, your servant, talk with you, my Lord? My strength is gone. I can hardly breathe. Again, the one who looked like a man touched me and gave me the strength. Do not be afraid, O man, highly esteemed, he said. Peace, be strong. Now be strong. Then we move down to the last verse here, verse 20. So he said, listen up close, people. After Daniel was detained for 21 days, and the king released his restraints from Daniel. So he said, do you know why I have come to you? Soon I will return to fight against the prince of Persia.
Wow.
He said, do you know why I have come to you? Soon I will return. Soon I will return to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I go, the prince of Greece will come. But first I will tell you what is written in the book of truth. No one supports me against them except Michael, your prince. So, friends, Daniel is prophesying about a future time when the Lord is going to fight against the king of Persia. We know what Trump is doing. Trump is removing the deep state out of these regions, out of North Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Why was the media so intent, Chuck, on hiding and just totally ignoring Trump's peace deal and bringing this Cohen crap that we're going to get into in a minute to the forefront?
Well, we always know they like to distract, detract. It's interesting because, you can tell those who are the devils and those who are gods because they operate on the same wavelength that their God does. So we know that the media, most of the mainstream media is in their satanic control. So the way they deal in like the deep state, and those in the Democrat Party that are the deep state, the way they operate is to cause confusion, and they want to blind you to what the truth is. The best way they can do that is by hyping something up as so horrible to detract from what's actually going on.
Amen. So Trump is successfully removing the grips the deep state has on North Korea.
Yeah.
And where is Trump's next crosshairs being pointed? Pointed to Iran. He has taken that deal away from Iran, and we have heard him several times say that the people of Iran like what's happening. We're putting sanctions on Iran. The people are now waking up to what's going on. We like this. This is a good thing.
Yeah, because it's putting restraint on the people that are there, at least to, kind of giving them some type of like accountability, but basically, holding their feet to the fire that if they don't knock this crap off, that, there's going to be consequences.
Right.
And, and really, in a lot of ways, our country is one of the only ones that can do that. I'm sure other countries have business dealings with them, but not like the United States does. We've got a lot of influence over their economy and all that stuff. So, I mean, that, like you said, the people over there, they have to deal with this oppressive government, or really dictator, people coming in and just ruling it, and they weren't elected. But, I mean, they have to deal with what their leaders are doing. And, it's just kind of forced on them. So at least the United States is doing this, is somehow, at least a little bit of deterrence, if not anything, letting kind of like a humbling, like you're not in control.
Right.
You don't do this, then this is what's going to happen to you. And the leaders are like, oh, man. Because the one thing they understand is money.
Right.
So you take their money away, then it gets their attention.
But we have Iran now ticked off because they're not getting their way now.
Right.
And they're threatening Israel. And I'm going to tell you something now. When Netanyahu came and he spoke on that day in 2015, March the 3rd or 4th, I believe it was right at the beginning of Purim that year, because it don't fall on the same exact day or date.
Each year.
Right, but it's generally in March. And he said that under no circumstances are we going to be run out of our land ever again.
Right.
And since then, Iran has been. But here we have Q telling us T-minus 21 days and counting. We have the king of Persia and Daniel restraining Daniel, the king of Persia, for 21 days before the Lord tells him, hey, I'm coming in a future time, and I'm coming after the king of Persia.
Wow.
They want to unseat Netanyahu. They want him gone because Netanyahu is not doing what the globalists want him to do.
Yeah.
Neither is Trump, and they want to unseat him as well.
Well, really, neither is Putin.
Well, Putin, of course not. That's for a whole other show.
Right, but I'm saying, just the whole the leadership really are resisting that whole deep state. So, and a lot of countries.
Right. So we get the fact that all of this is in unison. This 21-day countdown is in unison with the beginning of Purim. That was the decree that was given to the Jews to enforce and remember every year forever that they have the right to go and annihilate their enemy. Now, let's get to the devil. We have just told you the weather, and now we're going to tell you which way the wind is blowing.
That's right.
Let's get to the devil's side of this. These peace deals that are being brokered. The deep state wants it, like you said, distracted, chaos. Don't want the truth out. And they bring in Michael Cohen into Congress to testify once again, who is a known liar, who has been branded a felon now for lying in front of Congress. He's going to prison for it. And everybody was so concerned about this. They were like, well, they're going to impeach Trump. Why? In any normal court of law, anyone that has been deemed a liar has no more credibility regardless throughout that entire trial. Mm-hmm. None. So why are they allowed to be brought in? Because it was Elijah Cummings, who's a Democrat, that played ball, or is playing ball, with the deep state. It's like, well, let's do it. And Laney Davis, the attorney, talked him into doing it the week that Trump was in North Korea. We get the idea. But old Jim
Jordan.
Yeah. Jim Jordan, he laid it out.
He hit the nail on the head.
In his opening statement, if you have not heard this, check this out.
Mr. Chairman, here we go. Here we go. Your first big hearing, your first announced witness, Michael Cohen. I want everyone in this room to think about this. The first announced witness for the 116th Congress is a guy who is going to prison in 2 months for lying to Congress. Mr. Chairman, your chairmanship will always be identified with this hearing. And we all need to understand what this is. This is the Michael Cohen hearing presented by Lanny Davis. That's right. Lanny Davis choreographed the whole darn thing. The Clintons' best friend, loyalist, operative, Lanny Davis put this all together. You know how we know? He told our staff. He told the committee staff. He said the hearing was his idea. He selected this committee. He had to talk Michael Cohen into coming. And most importantly, he had to persuade the chairman to actually have it. He told us it took 2 months to get that job done. But here we are. He talked him into it. This might be the first time someone convicted of lying to Congress has appeared again so quickly in front of Congress. Certainly, it's the first time a convicted perjurer has been brought back to be a star witness in a hearing. And there's a reason this is the first, because no other committee would do it. Think about this. With Mr. Cohen here, this committee, we got lots of lawyers on this committee. This committee is actually encouraging a witness to violate attorney-client privilege. Mr. Chairman, when we legitimize dishonesty, we delegitimize this institution. We're supposed to pursue the truth, but you have stacked the deck against the truth. We're only allowed to ask certain questions. Even with that amendment you just told us about, well, Russia's now on the table. You initially told us we can't ask questions about the special counsel, can't ask questions about the Southern District of New York, can't ask questions about Russia. Nope. Only subjects we can talk about are ones you think are going to be harmful to the President of the United States. And the answers to those questions are going to come from a guy who can't be trusted. Here's what the U.S. Attorney said about Mr. Cohen. While Mr. Cohen enjoyed a privileged life, his desire for ever greater wealth and influence precipitated an extensive course of criminal conduct. Mr. Cohen committed four distinct federal crimes over a period of several years. He was motivated to do so by personal greed and repeatedly used his power and influence for deceptive ends. But the Democrats don't care. They don't care. They just want to use you, Mr. Cohen. You're their patsy today. They got to find somebody, somewhere, to say something so they can try to remove the president from office. Because Tom Steyer told him to. Tom Steyer, last week, organized a town hall. Guess where? Chairman Nadler's district in Manhattan. 2 nights ago, Tom Steyer organized a town hall. Guess where? Chairman Cummings' district in Baltimore. The best they can find to start this process, Michael Cohen. Fraudster, cheat, convicted felon, and in 2 months a federal inmate. Oh, actually, they didn't find him. Laney Davis found him. I'll say one thing about the Democrats. They stick to the playbook. Remember how all this started. The Clinton campaign hired Perkins Coie law firm, who hired Glenn Simpson, who hired a foreigner, Christopher Steele, who put together the fake dossier that the FBI used to go get a warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. But when that whole scheme failed, and the American people said, we're going to make Donald Trump president, they said, we got to do something else. So now, Clinton loyalist, Clinton operative Laney Davis has persuaded the chairman of the Oversight Committee to give a convicted felon a forum to tell stories and lie about the President of the United States so they can all start their impeachment process. Mr. Chairman, we are better than this. We are better than this. I yield back.
We're better than this.
Oh, wow.
I mean, just to rip the...
He laid it out.
He laid the truth out.
Yeah.
So we see with this type of gangster tactics, how desperate the criminal elite have become.
It should encourage you that they really don't have a leg to stand on if this is the best they could come up with.
Well, and the reason
crazy
that we were looking at the parallels between what took place in Esther and what is taking place in Revelations with, these things that are going to come upon us. Revelations means to reveal. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, they attribute Revelations to Armageddon, which is what it speaks of. But the definition of Revelations is to reveal.
Yeah.
And so God is unmasking and uncovering all of the evil and all of the wickedness. Mm-hmm. And we need to take this as a warning, Chuck.
Right.
Because he is, God is a righteous judge, and basically God is in the court of law, and we are the jury, and God is presenting the evidence. This is why I am coming to judge you.
Yeah.
And so we need to see it as that. God is revealing all of the wickedness that we have been involved in so that when he does come and judge us, he's true to his word.
It's kind of like what he was just doing, Mr. Jordan.
He was
laying out exactly what this guy was guilty of and why he shouldn't be there, and how this whole thing, like if you were in a regular court of law, he wouldn't even be allowed, nobody in their right mind would call somebody who just got convicted of lying to Congress. Like, if somebody just came in and lied when they got called into the courtroom, lied to the jury, lied to the judge, would then leave and then come back again as a witness about some other case. Not in anybody's wildest dreams would that ever even come close to being a reality.
Well, and he lied straight up, Chuck. He lied several times during the deal. I mean, I'm not going to focus all this on Michael Cohen.
Right.
But he was asked, if he heard about this Roger Stone telling Trump that he had physically heard Roger Stone say, yes, I talked to Julian Assange.
Right.
And he was asked about that, and Cohen said, yes, I was sitting in Trump's office. The phone rang. Trump put it on speakerphone.
Right, I remember that.
And it was Roger Stone, and he told Trump, hey, I just got off the phone with Julian Assange, and he told me that in the next couple of days or whatever, I'm going to start releasing all of Hillary's emails. And Trump's like, okay, good deal, and hangs up. Cohen testified he heard Roger Stone say that. Yeah. And WikiLeaks was watching this testimony live, and the minute Cohen said that, WikiLeaks posted a tweet that stated, we are standing here saying Michael Cohen just lied because Julian Assange has never spoken to Roger Stone.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was just immediate. The lying. Yeah. I mean, I could comb through his entire deal and point to you lie after lie.
Well, did you hear that it was a former sheriff that had been now elected into Congress, and he goes, you, sir, did you see him?
No.
You, sir, remind me of many men who I think he said who I, put away, or who I, basically arrested for lying, for saying stuff, that, just to save their own hide. They're in there for a little bit and they tell you how sorry they are just because they got caught.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, just listening to him, I could totally imagine him being the sheriff arresting people just totally. And even the people in the courtroom were kind of like, what the heck is this guy? But it was just so solid. Like, I don't know you. I didn't know you till you came in here. I didn't know who you were. And, and he was saying, he goes, hey, and I bet you have some book deals lined up after this is all over with, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
He goes, tell me, Mr. Cohen, have you talked to anybody to get any book deals or movie, once this is over with? He goes, no, but I've been approached by lots of people. He almost kind of said it kind of like boastfully almost.
Yeah.
Even though he was kind of trying to hold it back. And he's like, I bet, kind of like, but it was interesting to hear them kind of go back and forth that these guys, these people who I believe are very, Christians. He said, I think he even said he was the sheriff, and it was a trip because you can tell the people that have the discernment.
Right.
Grilling this guy, and even that, I think that I was telling you about that other woman who said, it's such a waste of money to be doing this when we could be addressing all these other issues. We've got a convicted liar up here testifying, wasting our time when we could be taking care of all these other things and using money to take care of the problems that are in our country. But they'd rather bring this person up to try to attack the president, basically. And it's so evident to anybody who's paying any attention that has the spirit to discern, like it says the spirit says, and he who has eyes to see and ears to hear. It's truth. And people who understand truth can see right through this stuff.
Well, exactly. And I don't remember the lady's name. I wished I had
me too.
Captured this. But there was another woman that was there that worked one-on-one with Cohen and Trump. And she was basically there all the time during all of this. And Trump had her, or they had her there. So Cohen is like telling all these lies, knowing that this one lady right here knew he was lying.
Wow.
So just imagine the pressure that's under this guy, man. I mean, he was like burning in flames and
oh, yeah.
And by that little act, it's just pouring gas on him, and
yeah.
It was just like, wow. But then the Democrats were just like, and Cortez, enough about Cohen.
Yeah.
We get the idea. But, so they're melting down. I mean, they're pulling stunts like this.
Yeah.
Okay. And the American people are seeing it. Now, this week, or actually today, as a matter of fact, Trump says that he will sign an executive order to promote free speech on university campuses. Now, we know that they are coming after our speech. Okay, you said it at the beginning of the show. Everything the Democrats are all about, they project onto the Democrats.
Right.
Okay? They project us as being racist.
Yeah.
They project Trump as being a Hitler. Okay? They project all of these things when they are the ones that are like that.
They're so blind. It's interesting because they know all the wicked ways to behave. And you can see the darkness is converged on them because they can't even see the truth of their own situation. Now, some of them do, and they're purposely projecting. And I think some actually don't even see it, but they see it.
They're consumed with the Spirit.
Well, you talk about, too, it's like they say, you don't even see the plank in your own eye while you're trying to remove the speck out of somebody else's eye. And that's kind of what they're doing. They're seeing past their own stuff and looking at somebody else. Like, it's kind of interesting when you don't take care of stuff in your own life. Your mission is to right everybody else.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, so and that's kind of them, is they don't recognize the sin and they don't want to look at it. So they want to run after everybody else and fix everybody else, and somehow that'll make them feel better that they're not taking care of what they're supposed to be taking care of.
Right.
So,
well, see, they project all this on Trump. He's a Hitler.
Right.
He's going to take away all your rights. He's a racist. He's doing all this thing while the Democrats are the ones pushing for the removal of the First Amendment, the removal of the Second Amendment, the removal of the Fourth Amendment.
Yeah.
They are the ones.
They're pushing the white privilege thing.
Right. And everything is racist.
Exactly.
They have taken something that does not even exist as a crime and turning it into something that you can be not prosecuted like in law by, but persecuted for.
Right.
And they are going after the guns when they say that they're not. They're going after the freedom of speech when they say that they're not, because it's only conservative Christians that are being censored on all of these social media.
Right.
So why does Trump have to sign an executive order to promote free speech when we have a First Amendment? Why? That is what I'm having trouble sidling up on, is we have a First Amendment. There should be no executive order. Trump should just use his presidential powers and say, that's it. And that's what worries me, that he's not doing it. Now, so okay, good. So Trump's going to sign this executive order, but he has no need to sign it. We have a First Amendment. Just like we have a Second Amendment. Have you heard about Bill H.R. 8 and Bill H.R. 1112? This is the bill that let me get you caught up, people, because I saw this and my brain about exploded. So Cuomo up there in New York, I think it was Monday, came out and did a speech. New York has now passed the red flag law, just like Washington State, just like Maryland, Colorado now. It's gone to their house for a vote.
Virginia too, or no?
No, I don't think so. But New York now has become the fourth state to pass the red flag law. If you don't know what that is, red flag law means that if I just called the police and said, I think Chuck's a danger to himself, under the red flag law, they can go to Chuck's house without due process, without trial, without anything, and confiscate his guns right then by law.
If I resist, they shoot me.
And because they shot that man in Maryland who resisted. And so New York now has passed this law, and they also passed that sale of private firearms. Like if I was to sell you right now, if I sell you a gun, you can just buy it and you're done.
Right.
Well, now they want to register that. They want you to have a background check. And so New York has passed this, and he brought Nancy Pelosi up that Monday and was puffed up and proud and said, look what we did for New York. And Nancy Pelosi got up and did her speech and said, I'm taking this back to Washington, and we're going to do this nationwide.
Wow.
Then she gets back to Washington. She writes this bill, H.R. 8 and H.R. 112. And it has passed the House, headed to the Senate. Now, in it, she'll come out and tell you, well, all this has to do is for private gun sales. I think there's nothing wrong if you sell a gun privately, that the party that's buying it must go through a background check. That's all this bill is. That's it. That's all it is, and we need to pass it. And everybody's like,
just trust me.
Yeah. And everybody's like, well, that's not too bad. Actually, that is a pretty good idea. In theory, maybe it's a good idea, but I'm sorry. We have a Second Amendment that we, all of us, have the right to keep and bear arms, and that right shall not be infringed in any way.
And see, people will freak out. Some people will freak out when you say that, like, oh, what do you mean no restrictions? Like, somebody could just own, like, all the guns the military has? Well, if you kind of follow what it says.
That's what it says.
Exactly. But here's the thing, too. When you have people most people who respect, the Second Amendment, they really, will be responsible with their guns.
Right.
So if somebody can have a gun, really be thinking about it, and this is my opinion, and maybe people out there that disagree with me, that's cool, you can. But like, according to the definition, what you just said, there shouldn't be any restrictions.
None at all.
And people freak out when you say that, like, what do you mean no restrictions? It's like, well, if you're going to go by what it says, you kind of got to go by what it says.
Right. So
it may not make you feel comfortable thinking, oh, well, somebody's got this and this and this, and there could be more of a chance of somebody, detonate a grenade or something like that, doing something, causing more damage. But here's the thing: when you start putting limitations on stuff, like the framers knew, that's why they didn't even want to do a constitution, didn't want to do Bill of Rights. They just wanted people to just have the freedom to do stuff. They didn't feel like they had to make a law. But now that the law is introduced, they knew eventually that law will be used against us.
Right.
So it's kind of like the whole thing. Like when you start putting restrictions on stuff, as scary as it is to some people,
one thing leads to another.
That, saying that you think that people should have any kind of guns, you kind of have to be willing to, you're going to exchange, your liberty for, security, and you don't deserve either one of them. Nope. So really, if you look at it, that's kind of what you're doing. Well, we should have restrictions because blah, blah, blah. Well, then you're willing to, like he said, trade in your liberty for security.
Amen. And so this is the way it's being sold to the American people.
Yep.
Now, criminals aren't going to worry about background checks, even if it does pass.
Right.
Okay. Now, of all people to come out and speak against this bill, it was Steve Scalise. Now, we remember Steve Scalise was the one that was shot in that softball game by that crazed Democrat with the rifle.
Yeah.
So Steve Scalise, of all people, who if there was somebody that would be for some sort of gun control, it would have to be Steve Scalise.
He's still not.
Right?
Right.
I mean,
well, look at Gabby Giffords, or was it Gabby Giffords that got shot by that guy, with a pistol and stuff, and then her and her husband's on the anti-gun crusade. It's just sad that you see both situations, like, with Scalise and then Gifford, you got two night and day situations where one's for gun control and the other one's for, obviously, still for freedom to have a gun even after being shot.
Right.
So,
but Steve Scalise, who almost died because he was fired upon, he was hit, spent a lot of time in the hospital. Listen to what he said about the bill. Listen close, people. Call your senators because it's already passed the House. It's going to the Senate. I called Marsha Blackburn and Lamar Alexander, both senators from Tennessee, and they both told me it's unconstitutional. They're not going to pass it. But the Senate was able to push through that abortion after, the abortion after birth bill.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous right now because if they pass this, it'll go from the Senate to the president's desk. Now, Trump tells us he's going to veto it.
Right.
But the fact that it could possibly pass the Senate is very alarming. Listen to what Steve Scalise had to say. Basically, he broke it down in layman's terms, what's in the rest of this bill.
I want to thank everybody here who's standing up in support of the Second Amendment, but specifically standing against these two gun control bills that Nancy Pelosi is bringing to the floor this week. And if you look at these bills, they don't have anything to do with background checks. It's about making criminals out of law-abiding citizens. And ultimately, as you've heard story after story from the people standing behind me, every single day Americans use guns to defend themselves from criminals. That is the heart of what the Second Amendment is about, and it's at the heart of what our founding fathers intended, that all Americans should have the right to use firearms to defend themselves. And over, we see guns used to defend themselves. And yes, in these bills, think about some very specific problems with these bills that Nancy Pelosi doesn't want you to know about. They didn't want me to testify before the Judiciary Committee when Doug Collins tried to have me included in that panel because I wasn't going to spread their message of gun control. In fact, I was going to counter it. And so what I will tell you is right now under this bill, if you've got a neighbor and your neighbor is being beaten up by her boyfriend, she's got a temporary restraining order against her boyfriend, and she's afraid that tonight she's going to come to her house and do her harm, and she asks you to borrow your gun. You can be a felon under this bill for that one simple act of loaning your gun to a friend to defend herself from someone who's going to attack her. You can go to jail for a year. You can be fined $100,000. They say they have exemptions for hunting, and yet the language is so vague that if you went hunting with a friend, you also need to bring your attorney to sit in the deer stand with you and figure out if you hand him your rifle and maybe he wants to go to the range to scope it, you can then go to jail for an act like that. That's what this bill does. This bill turns law-abiding citizens into criminals, and it's one more step towards federalized gun registration and ultimately gun confiscation. That's been the intention of many of the people that are bringing this bill for a long time. They want true gun control, and this is the first step. It's surely not the last. We need to reject these two bad gun control bills.
So, very interesting. A man who was actually almost killed is standing up for the Second Amendment. And friends, this is what's really in the bill. Mm-hmm. And they're candy coating it on the surface. And if you've been riding the fence about this bill, or if you don't even know anything about it, this is really happening. So call your Senate.
That's right. You know, I kind of go back to what we were just saying about not putting limitations on the Second Amendment. You know, it's so important because people who understand the Second Amendment understand how important it is to have freedom. And you can't limit that freedom in regards to the Second Amendment, and well, really to anything, but because we're talking about the Second Amendment, you know, I just feel like I wish they would just concentrate on stuff that really needs to be taken care of and stop going after guns. I always think about how much better our country would be if we didn't have to constantly fight for our freedom. We just were able to just enjoy it. How much easier it would be to prosper.
It'd be Mayberry.
Exactly. Well, I'm saying you have your guns instead of sitting there fighting like our representatives spending all this tax money fighting for our freedoms,
fighting against the Constitution,
right?
With our money,
right? But I'm saying like even the representatives that are like pro Second Amendment, pro, right? You know, if they didn't have to even battle it out with Democrats and those, you know, I don't know if there's any in the Republican Party that support this stuff, but
they will be. They're the rhinos.
But I'm saying, you know, like if they didn't have to battle it out with that, they could actually concentrate on making our country better.
But see, they don't. The beast is rising.
Right.
That's the whole point. See, socialism, communism, the beast system. Chuck, you gonna be all right, buddy?
Yeah, a little bit of coffee coming.
Give you the Heimlich maneuver here. You worry me, boy.
I'm getting choked up.
You worry me. Chuck, are you familiar with a convention state?
Yeah.
Sister Cheryl shot me
not a constitutional convention, but a convention of the states.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Sister Cheryl shot me a article that I found very interesting, that Arkansas is now passing to be part of this convention states. And basically, in a nutshell, what it breaks down to is the state is its own individual in regards to the Constitution.
Right.
And any federal law that is passed outside of the Constitution that is not constitutional,
they don't have to obey it.
They don't have to obey it.
Yeah.
And then they are part of the convention states. So basically, in the boil down,
our framers
wrote
that into the Constitution.
Well, that's what that is. And so Arkansas is now the eighth state to jump on board of these conventions.
I think they got how many do they have to have in order to be able to, to do that? Is it a third or a
I don't know. I don't have that right in front of me.
I'll have to look that up.
Somebody will let us know.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of the states that have to be involved to be able to do that, like to successfully. I think it's to do amendments to the Constitution, or
Well, it's a protection, basically, is what it is.
Okay.
Against like a tyrannical federal government.
Yeah.
Which is what we have now. And in researching this, Florida is a convention state. Arkansas is. I can't remember. I think Oklahoma is, but Tennessee is.
Yeah.
Tennessee in 2017, they're part of this now.
Very cool.
Which, yeah, that is cool because, we like our state right here. So, find out if your state is.
We love our reps.
Exactly. Find out if your state.
Not Cohen over there in the in Memphis, but we pray for him still, but we just don't support him or are not very proud of that. But
right.
Yeah.
So find out, if your state is or is not, and if it's not, get involved, people. We are fighting a spiritual battle here.
That's right.
I have been wearing out my senators because my congressmen are going to do no good. I've been wearing out the senators, and they know me. They just know the sound of my voice now.
Do they know that you have a show? You ever mentioned to them of that? Or?
Well, I'm working to that angle to put my foot in the door.
So, by the way, we have so many visitors, or at least
yeah. So I'm working my way into that. Now, let's see here. 2/3 of the states must ask for a convention of states.
Yeah, a little over half, like 2/3. Yeah.
Thank you, Sister Sherry.
I said 1/3, but I meant to say 2/3. Half to 2/3.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate that. Let's see. Okay, let me play one clip for you. And I don't know what has been put into the water with these people that are drinking. But
it's not good.
Right. But Cortez, man, I mean, she thinks that she's God. Nancy Pelosi was reported to tell Europe that she has just as much power as Trump does. And I'm thinking, what is
people
going
are so
on?
full of themselves. Like what AOC says, I'm the boss.
Yeah. And so they're trying to push this Green Deal down people's throat,
Right.
which we talked about that.
She says, "Oh, it's causing so much conversation, and because nobody's tried this before." I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Good. I'm waiting for everybody to start laughing when she says it, but people don't. And I'm just like, "Wow, okay, they really actually believe what she's saying." Okay,
yeah. And real quick, Pat, he reminded us that you can override the Supreme Court decision with the Article 5 Constitution of the States. So, very good. Thank you for that information. So, okay, with that being said, they're pushing this Green Deal down our throat. And if you look at the Green Deal, it's getting rid of the farting cows, stopping all plane transportation, all car transportation.
The Green New Deal?
Yeah, get away.
They call it the Green New Deal.
Right. Get away from fossil fuels, the whole 9 yards. And every building, every house has to be torn down in the United States and then rebuilt under this new green ordinance, okay? And if you look at it in depth, that's going to cause all kind of chaos and death and everything
Well,
else.
the military vehicles run off of diesel.
Mm-hmm.
Our concrete trucks run off of diesel. Your truck runs diesel.
Yeah.
The barges run off of diesel.
Nothing's going to move.
Exactly.
And so we talked about in past shows. I don't know if we talked about it when you were here, but like we went back to the Hebrew translation here when we were talking about Purim with these letters, these names in the New Testament. When we look at certain phrases in the New Testament. In the Greek, if you go back, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, when you look at the pale horse is going to bring death and the things that this Green Deal is going to usher in.
Yeah.
You look at the Greek translation, it's the pale green horse.
Right.
In the Greek. So it's like.
Kind of an interesting coincidence.
Yeah. Could that.
I say coincidence. Interesting.
Theory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like a parallel.
Right. And so, not saying that the Green Deal is the pale horse, people. I don't want the emails. I'm just saying,
enough email.
Right. But anyway, so Cortez was talking about this bill and how she's the one that's working hard on it. And check out her demeanor, her attitude, and what she actually said.
And I read it and I was like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. Because, again, I'm at least trying, and they're not. So the power is in the person who's trying, regardless of the success. If you're trying, you've got all the power. You're driving the agenda. You're doing all this stuff. Like, I just introduced Green New Deal 2 weeks ago, and it's creating all of this conversation. Why? Because no one else has even tried. Because no one else has even tried. So people are like, oh, it's unrealistic. Oh, it's vague. Oh, it doesn't address this little minute thing. And I'm like, you try. You do it.
Right.
Because you're not. Because you're not. So until you do it, I'm the boss.
That's
How
right.
about that?
You heard it here.
Seriously,
They better try because I don't want her to be the boss.
I mean, where do they, I mean they are just, as my mother would say, they are what does she say? They are puffed up with the effervescence of their own verbosity. You know,
Right.
I mean, what is going on with these people, man? But we can see this demeanor. The beast is rising. They're telling everybody what they're going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if Trump does not get elected in 2020, if he does, and then we're able to go through 2024, that's it.
Yeah.
There's not going to be another Trump.
Right.
And if we even sustain life that long, then we're done.
Yeah.
Because all of these wackos, the beast, well, it's the beast, it's rising. We know what it is. But we're just showing you how close that we are, because at the end of this, we're going to tie a bow on this of what we opened the show with to show you where we are at in this time of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Chuck, you had mentioned sudden destruction when they're talking peace and security. In your opinion, what would that sudden destruction look like?
You know, and obviously it could come in many different forms. There are many different ways that could happen, you know, from a cataclysmic, you know, some type of a earth impact of a, you know, massive meteor like we were talking about, or volcanoes, like all that stuff erupting at the same time, and or like a, you know, the what is it, Yellowstone exploding, and you know, that could be anything like that. It could be one event, or it could be many different events happening at the same time or right around the same time. Obviously, everybody thinks about like some type of a nuclear bomb or, you know, atomic bomb going off and wiping out, you know, a bunch of people on the earth. And, you know, I think that, you know, they're saying peace and security, like in that clip. You know, I really think that, I personally think it's going to be some type of military thing. That's what I think. I just have a feeling that's going to be something going on with nuclear bombs, because when it says sudden destruction, that just, to me, sudden destruction would be the most, you know, obviously observed with some type of a massive bomb going off.
Mm-hmm.
Where a volcanic thing, all these things are kind of like a gradual thing, would take some time unless you're right next to the volcano, you know. But like a bomb, you know, just goes off so fast. It's like a sudden thing. So that's kind of what I lean more towards when I think of that.
Well, I do too, because I've tossed that around in my head, and so I'm thinking when they say peace and security, I'm curious as to, well, they're saying peace and security now. We haven't seen a sudden destruction,
right?
So is it the UN that's going to have to announce now that we have peace and security with Israel?
Right.
Is it going to be an announcement of, say, North Korea and Iran? We have peace now. You know, who is it going to be said about?
The key person that's going to be the one that says it, and then that's
right.
Will it need to be a national prayer place?
Mm-hmm.
They announce it from the national prayer,
the cathedral,
right?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's interesting.
Who is going to be the one to say it, how it's going to be, or even what that sudden destruction is going to even look like. Right. I'm like you. I mean, I'm tossing ideas back and forth in my head, left and right, and I come up with 1,000 different ways.
Yeah.
Okay. Before I play this clip, I am not saying that we have any catastrophic thing coming. Okay.
Yeah.
We being a watchman, we just tell you what's going on that you're not hearing in the news to be aware of. And Warren Buffett had put out an article. Now, you know Warren Buffett, richest man ever,
right?
Practically. Knows how to make money, especially during circumstances.
And bad circumstances, right?
So, and I want you to think of something. Why are all of these, like, mega million rich millionaires wanting to leave the earth? We've got Elon Musk wanting to go up into Mars, okay, and start colonies on Mars. We've got these rich elite, buying their bunkers out in New Zealand and places. I mean, people are now starting to go to these places, okay? Yeah. Those that are in the know.
Yeah.
They know more than we know, okay? Listen to what Warren Buffett is doing right now.
A mega catastrophe is coming to the United States of America, something that will make Hurricane Katrina and any other natural or man-made disaster we've ever experienced look like a gnat. And this is not my opinion. This is actually coming from the words of what some people would argue is the greatest investor of all time. His name is Warren Buffett. And what's amazing about this are people are missing this news. In fact, they're not reading the Berkshire Hathaway report that just came out, where Buffett says just that. He thinks the losses will be so catastrophic, it could potentially, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, set back civilization, humanity, and the United States specifically, multi-generations. The losses will be catastrophic for insurance companies, of which Warren Buffett owns. People call him the Oracle. They say he's the smartest guy they've ever seen when it comes to investing and predicting future business trends and events. So isn't it curious that Warren Buffett is now warning of what he calls and dubs a mega catastrophe hitting our shores? And what could he mean by it? What's coming? A new hurricane? Tsunami, like we saw in Japan not too long ago? The flooding with Hurricane Harvey and Maria? The battering of Puerto Rico? Or could it be a bigger event? Like an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, or a solar event. Maybe the sun causes the grid to go down completely. And there's chaos in the streets. You think Americans are prepared for this? Are you? Let's take a look at this. These are the exact words of Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett believes a major catastrophe is just around the corner. Billionaire investor is famed for seeming sixth sense when it comes to the stock market, but business has been flat lately, and he's becoming increasingly concerned about a looming catastrophe that could shake civilization itself. Buffett released his annual letter to Berkshire Hathaway Inc. shareholders over the weekend. The letter is always well read in the business world because of his remarkable track record, his habit of dissecting the economy or other topics, and his talent for explaining complicated subjects in plain language. So what does he say? Many people tune into Warren Buffett, obviously. He's warned the American public of a pending, quote, mega catastrophe. He says not only will it shake global markets to the very core, he believes it will stress society to its absolute breaking point. This is a direct quote. A major catastrophe that will dwarf Hurricanes Katrina and Michael will occur perhaps tomorrow, perhaps many decades from now, he wrote. The big one may come from a traditional source like hurricane or an earthquake in California, a volcano eruption, or maybe a total surprise involving, say, a cyber attack, an EMP, having disastrous consequences beyond anything we can now contemplate.
So now we have a man who makes money on these things, moving his finances around, getting ready for something.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here thinking he has nothing to gain and everything to lose by saying stuff like this because, anytime somebody says something, like doom and gloom in a sense, it causes ripples in the stock market. Especially when it's somebody who actually has some clout, it makes a big difference. And I don't know that you would have much to gain by saying stuff like that.
Well, exactly. Unless you're in the know.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And so I don't know, friends. I mean, let's kind of recap here as we go along, because we're building a house here. We need to go back to the foundation to make sure we're not putting too much weight on it. But we have ushering a warning of 21 days, which is going to bring us up to this year's anniversary of Purim for Israel. The peace deal is about to be brokered, or something is going to be discussed and laid out on the table. Whether they agree with it or not, I don't know. But it's happening right around that time. We've got so many threats from Iran, from these various entities that want us. We're the big Satan. Israel's the little Satan. Could this be a peace and security deal? And Daniel has been telling us that he fasted and prayed for 21 days before he was given the vision, and then before basically he could speak it, the king tied him up for 21 days. All these things are adding up. We got Warren Buffett now moving finances around.
President Trump, emergency preparedness.
Yeah.
Thing, remember that?
Yeah,
We have that military guy who was on that other show that was very concerned about being called for a domestic deployment off of his maternity leave.
Mm-hmm.
So
for a domestic disturbance.
That's what I'm saying, and he was very, very concerned about it. So, there's some type of impending thing that, I think the threat is just there. They just don't know exactly when it's going to happen.
Right.
Like they know it's there, and obviously enough to call him back from his deployment. So they said that doesn't really happen
very often.
Exactly.
Or at all. I don't know. I mean, we're just throwing it out there, friends, to give you an idea of what we're staring down the barrel of. All of this, as last weekend, we had the day of mourning.
Mm-hmm.
Or was it last weekend or the weekend? It was February the 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
We had that day of mourning that Ron and I participated in, and Chad. I'm glad that we did.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 2 Chronicles 7:14 cry out to God for him to heal this land.
Wow.
And it was powerful. We have a repentance.
Yeah.
We have a call out to God, and he gave us a promise that he would heal our land.
Mm-hmm.
But we know we're living in the last days because of the things that we're seeing. And look at the weather that we have had these last couple of weeks. Real quick, let me bounce over here to England, because we got Sister Jamie over there in Southampton checking us out. I did not even know about this storm until she let me know about it. But I guess you pronounce it Freya. It's a storm moving into England. So, I mean, it's not just here in the United States. Check this out real quick.
Now let's deal with that wet and windy weather, because there is Storm Freya, the strongest winds on its southern flank. So Wales, southwest England through the afternoon, spreading into the Midlands, parts of northern England, possibly southern Scotland. And then as it clears, well, we could see some snow across parts of eastern Scotland through the early hours of Monday morning. But the winds are the greatest cause for concern. Now, this storm hasn't formed yet, so it could be a little further north, it could be a little further south. There's always going to be some uncertainty, but currently yellow warnings in force. Gusts of wind of 55 to 65 miles an hour inland, around coast 70 to 80 miles an hour. So we could well see some problems from that storm. Potential for travel disruption, particularly into Monday morning's rush hour. Now, as I said, there's some uncertainty about the track of that storm, so make sure you stay up to date. The very latest weather warnings are on the Met Office websites. They're on our app, or of course you can always get the very latest by following us on Twitter and Facebook.
So, did you hear that, Chalk?
I heard that accent when you come out. I was like, whoa.
They're having 70 to 80 mile an hour winds over there. Oh, we're not making fun.
You should be a weather man.
Yeah. I think that was a little bit Cheatham County, a little bit Australia.
I was like, I'm trying to pinpoint that one.
But 70 to 80 mile an hour winds, man. Yeah. They were having 60 mile an hour winds last week in those storms up there, and trucks being blown over in Michigan. And now England is getting hit with 70 to 80 mile an hour winds.
Possible snow.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're seeing these things not just happening here, but happening globally, okay?
Yeah.
And
how about in California when they have the snow? Like they were tripping out like, wow, it's snowing.
Yeah, in Hawaii, and it snowed in Maui.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, just this weird weather. With that being stated, what has got God so furious? We are killing babies now.
Yeah.
After their birth. And the governor down there in Virginia, he's like, oh, we keep them comfortable, we keep them alive so we can sell their organs. Well, of course, he didn't say that, but that's why they're keeping them alive. We keep them comfortable. And okay, so we understand what they're doing with the babies, okay? They're bringing them in across the border, these kids, and we know what they do with the blood. We've talked about it, the sacrifice, the rituals, and all of that. Mm-hmm. And now that the wall is going up, it's going to put a stop to that.
Right.
Or it's going to hinder it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And what immediately happens once the wall goes up? Well, now all these states start passing these full-term abortion, and even after the child is born, laws. So they can still get their children.
Well, and they can get their money, too.
Yeah,
that way they can keep operating.
That's it. And so that's why we have seen such a rise in this type of deal. And so Trump, when he came out and did the State of the Union, he said, hey, we need to pass laws to at least stop the right up until birth law to pass.
Right.
And this, they rejected that law. They rejected that law. The Senate has shot down that law to protect babies being born. Check this out.
Wow.
For a pro-life bill on the Senate floor. This bill was very specific. It only would protect infants who survived abortions at the end of the term by requiring healthcare officials to treat them with the same degree and skill and care that they would of any other baby. But it was short of the 60 votes needed to advance. Joining me now is the author of that abortion survivors bill, Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse. Senator, thank you very much for being here tonight. Your thoughts on your bill, which I know you feel very strongly about.
I do feel strongly about this. This is about the most simple thing you can say, which is that a baby is a baby, and they have dignity and they have worth, and it's not because they're powerful, it's because they're babies. And so today is a sad day in the United States Senate, but I remain hopeful long term because ultimately the United States Senate today could have a bunch of people, 44 of our members, decided to try to stick their head in the sand and pretend that a baby isn't a baby. But 320 million Americans are going to have conversations around their kitchen table that are going to be more loving and logical, and in the long term I think that this is going to head in the right direction. But today's a sad day.
Shot down the law.
Yeah.
Now, God is not happy about that.
Nope.
At all. So now that, with the things that we're seeing escalating, the rise of the beast, this now with children, the weather that God's laying upon us.
Yeah.
What do you think is going through God's mind?
Well, just what we were just saying, but on a much larger scale, I'm sure.
Well, and I want you to just consider this. Do you know who Dave Dobbenmeyer is? If y'all don't know, he is the coach who prayed with his football team on the field, and he got sued by the ACLU and all of that. Got fired. Well, he has devoted his life to start speaking the truth for Jesus. And, buddy, he is on the forefront. He went to his senator, or congressman, I'm sorry, and wanted to speak to him about the 14th Amendment. Now, here's what the 14th Amendment reads. The 14th Amendment is the birthright citizenship. How can they murder babies? The 14th Amendment states that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protections of the law. Now, the Democrats stand an oak on this 14th Amendment when it comes to illegal aliens giving birth over here in the United States. And Dave Daubenmire went to go speak to his congressman, and he actually talked to one of the ladies that works in like the immigration department. And he says, ma'am, I have a question. He says, I'm a little confused about the 14th Amendment. And he asked the question, if an illegal alien has a baby here in the United States, is this what the 14th Amendment means? And she says, yes. And he says, well, I mean, now is this like, is the baby a citizen still in the womb? And she's like, no, the baby has to be literally, born here. As soon as it's born, it gets these rights from the 14th Amendment. And he said, well, does the baby have to be born in a hospital, or can it be born in a motel room, or what if it's born in the car on the way to the hospital? And the lady's like, no, if that child is born in the United States, it qualifies for the 14th Amendment. And then Dave Daubenmire says, well, then how come y'all are killing babies that are born if the 14th Amendment applies to illegal aliens?
She kind of hung herself on that one. She's like, oh, dang.
And she sat there, she's like, well, that's different. That's a medical issue. And she said, you'll have to talk to somebody who is in the medical. He said, no.
According to what you just said, it's very clear.
And he was just blown away because she was like, so he's like, basically what you're telling me is if there's a medical condition, then the 14th Amendment don't apply. And she goes, well, I can't say that because that's between the doctor and the patient. And I was just like, my God.
You just said it was born in a hospital or on the it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So you just answered what you're saying you can't answer.
Right. But when it comes to a baby that wants to be aborted, well, they don't. See what they're trying to do? They're making it a medical issue.
Or a political issue.
And taking it out of the reins of, okay, now, I don't want to go too deep into this because I have nothing prepared for it. But friends, if y'all have not seen Joe Rogan's and Alex Jones's podcast that they did a few days ago, it's 4 hours long. It is a long one, but I guarantee you're going to be sitting on the edge of the seat the whole time you're watching it.
You might not want to have your kids in there just because Joe Rogan gets a little loose with his language. So.
Well, they all do.
He's got he's got good stuff he says, but just if you're easily offended by any type of cursing, or if you got kids in there, you might not want to have them in there.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to a little bit at home, and you started popping off because I don't usually listen to Joe Rogan very much, so I wasn't really prepared. So my wife's like, you might want to turn that down. I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay,
yeah, because he came out of the gate slinging them, didn't he?
Well, and he doesn't get fired up and says them. He just, boom, just kind of shoots them off. So you're not really, at least with Alex, he'd get fired up and I'd need to turn it down a little bit. Yeah. Or Joe just kind of,
Yeah.
I love listening to him. I'm just saying I wasn't really expecting that, because I don't listen to as often, So, well, just a little word of warning, but it's good stuff. You just have to be, mindful of that.
Well, one thing that they touched on, because, the Bible says, so shall it be in the days of Noah, so shall be the coming of the Son of Man. In the days of Noah, the fallen angels were mating with the women of the earth and creating these Nephilim. They were skewing the DNA and they were birthing these giants, these beast/man. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
I wonder if that's kind of where they get the whole, what is it? The Greek mythology.
Yeah,
like the Zeus and all these, these Hercules, and they get all these big god men. They're half man and half god. I wonder if that's kind of where they get that.
And
stuff from.
What's that one creature? Is it a Zotar? Okay, the half man, half horse. What's that called?
Oh gosh, I can't even remember. But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, that is what was going on in the days of Noah. And today, what Alex touched on, which we've talked about, but I don't want to dive too deep into this right now, but they are now taking DNA from human beings and crossing them with swine and other animals and creating these half man, half animal, to where you can. I don't fully understand it, but basically what it is if you need a new organ, if they have this beast that has been created, but
their organs can be used. We can use that
right
because it's human organs.
They can sustain life,
right?
If like you blow out a transmission, you can go to the mechanic and get a new transmission. Well,
versus doing like a what do they call that, where you donate.
Right, you donate, and then you have to run the risk of rejection.
Right.
Well, by growing organs inside of an animal, they can implant it into you with no rejection.
Right.
And so that's what they're working on. They're taking the DNA and making half man and half beast. And Alex made the comment, man, that they are really speeding up this process to get it in the middle. Meaning I think right now
it's not a human or it's not an animal, so it doesn't fall under like human rights or animal rights.
Right.
There is no rights because it doesn't fall into either category. And so nobody can do anything about these beasts that are being created. Yeah.
Because like you said, they don't have human rights. They don't have animal rights. And it's kind of the same way with this abortion. The illegal aliens have the 14th Amendment, but they're trying to turn this into a doctor issue when it comes to abortion.
Right.
It's
crazy.
Like, we are here, man. We are in the days of Noah.
And they don't have any respect for life, or purity, or goodness.
Right. Exactly, man. It's a centaur. I ain't got my glasses. Hold on. Sister Sherry told us what it was. It's a centaur, half man, half horse. That's what it is. Sister Lisa, man, she shot us a link here as we're talking about this. That HHS extends contract to make humanized mice with aborted baby parts for another 90 days.
Wow.
The Department of Health, this is coming out of CNSnews.com. The Department of Health and Human Services says it has granted a second 90-day extension to a contract it has with the University of California and San Francisco that requires UCSF to make humanized mice. These creatures are made by implanting mice with human tissue taken from late-term aborted babies. The HHS multi-million-dollar contract with UCSF that requires the construction of these humanized mice creates a demand driven by federal tax dollars for tissue taken from late-term aborted babies. Now, according to an estimate that is published on its site, the National Institute of Health, which is a division of HHS, will spend $95 million this fiscal year alone on research that, like UCSF's humanized mouse contract uses human fetal tissue. Under this new 90-day extension, the contract, which the government calls Humanized Mouse Models for HIV Therapeutic Development, will run through June the 5th. So, I mean, it's out there, friends. It's out there, and they're trying to normalize it. They're trying to normalize it like they are abortion. See, the only God can only God can grant everlasting life to somebody.
Right.
So the devil has to concoct a way to have everlasting life, and this is how they're doing it.
Wow.
They're making a garage for your organs and such, so you can just keep sustaining life. The beast is rising, so shall it be in the days of Noah when the fallen angels, because let's get to the brass tacks. This is what this is. These are the fallen angels that have been held over and are still doing what they've always done. Mm-hmm. But you see people, it's all now coming out. God is showing us all of the evidence.
And something we might also look into, I saw an article about this is kind of off topic of what we're talking about, but kind of interesting in the times that we're in, the days we're in. I had this article about, you heard about the sex bots? And that was interesting because they're making, robots for stuff like that. And it's interesting because what went through my head when I saw that article was this is going to cause people to further go into selfishness because if you have, obviously, if you're not married to a human being, you don't have to learn how, like as a man and a woman, you don't have to learn how to get along and to work together. And then, you solve all these issues. But it was interesting how it's really going to expedite the whole selfish thing, because like you're not only just cutting off like relationships with people, but now you're having somebody that's a machine and does whatever you want, whenever you want. You don't have to learn to be unselfish, and you'll just become this totally horrible, self-absorbed, selfish person. So it's like you look at the times we live in and how the devil's introducing all of these different things, and mankind's biting on all the stuff that's just going to totally sink us spiritually, just further and further into darkness, dehumanizing people because there's no human interaction anymore. It's all just about self.
Well, it's going to AI. Then.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's just like there's just no. It's interesting to watch this stuff starting to rise up and become real big now as we get closer and closer to the end, because, we already have a hard time with the whole selfishness.
Oh, look at Facebook. Lovers of themselves, 2 Timothy chapter 3.
And that's what makes you think, wow, if you think about it, if you're not loving somebody else, you're loving a machine. Mm-hmm. You're really not. You're just it all becomes about you and about whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to just, catapult people deeper into that selfish thing. So,
well,
I know it's a trip to see the different things with technology that's rising up and how these big shifts are happening through technology with just disconnecting us from each other.
Right.
And from just human interaction and, sympathy. And you can totally see the revelations, what it's talking about. You can see all this coming to pass if you're paying attention through technology and Facebook and how it's just disconnecting everybody. It's just crazy to watch it all happen. It's like, wow.
Well, I gave the example last week. I was talking about 5G last week. I went into a great detail to explain how 5G is going to affect us, that they're going to use the AI to interact with us. And
fry our brains and fry our cells.
Right. But it's I use the analogy how 20 years ago they told us that we would be on electronic logs. Well, actually, they started out by saying, you're going to have this computer in your truck to where your dispatch can just send you messages and you can get it on the screen. And we were like,
well, how about these bots, too, that will record everything you say, and they're right there with you.
Right.
They'll know everything about you.
Right.
It's like, you know what I mean?
And how back then, we were thinking that's never going to happen. There's no way that they can do that. And boom, not only are we doing that, but now we're on electronic logs, and so like you said, we're seeing it grow. But getting back to what you said, to kind of tap into a little bit of last week, the 5G, basically what it is there's a frequency like a radio that our body communicates to the brain on that frequency. And with technology, with 3G, like I gave the analogy of a CB radio, they were able to get, our brain is operating on channel 40, okay? And with 3G, they were able to get into the CB band, but they were only down on channel 1, okay? And now with 4G, they're able to get on channel 20 of this CB. So we're up here on 40, so it's not really affecting us, right?
Right.
Well, with 5G, the actual frequency that our body transmits signals back and forth, that frequency they have been able to achieve in 5G.
Wow.
And our skin is nothing more than an antenna. So our brain is the receiver.
Right.
So, our brain is receiving signals from our body to make our lungs breathe, heartbeat, and all that. Our emotions, it's all frequency.
Interesting.
And with this 5G, they have found the exact channel, the exact frequency that our body operates on. And so when that signal comes out of the tower, our skin is an antenna, and that frequency goes into us. Our brain is not going to be able to decipher whether it's coming from a tower or from our body because it's the same frequency. And so with that, through the 5G, they can start putting emotions into your body, and your brain will just receive it and think that it's normal. A normal emotion.
How will that work out for the elections?
Well, seriously, think about that.
Make you feel a certain way towards a candidate when you see them pop on. They go,
good
start send out
point.
signals,
and then they send out signals that you got to like.
Make you feel good or make you feel bad about something.
And your brain is not going to know the difference.
That's interesting. Wow.
And so, what if they had a crowd of Antifa and they just put the signal out to angry and kill people?
Yeah.
You know, the brain's going to receive
kill
it.
Switch.
It's not going to know. You know, so. With AI, with this AI technology,
that would affect the AI too, right? Because they would be. I wonder what frequency they'd be operating on.
Well, that's the whole point. See, with the AI, you know, with it watching our Facebook and with it watching our actions, our buying habits, it's going to build a profile of us, and this AI is going to be able to predict what we're going to do in the future.
Alexa and everybody's home recording everything.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
So it's like the AI, if it's that intelligent, then if they want people to start doing something, the AI knows the profile of everybody in the United States and say, okay, well, this group of people is going to do what we want, so let's send that signal to this group of people. Mm-hmm. We need this group of people to do this, so we'll send that signal to this group of people. And that's what the 5G is all about. It's communicate. Of course, it's going to fry our organs and our brains and everything else, but they can also send us brain waves that our brain's going to interpret. That's why we need to be out of Satan's frequency.
Yeah.
Because God said we do not battle the flesh. We battle powers, principality, spiritual wickedness in high places. Mm-hmm. We need to get on God's frequency. Because the CB radio analogy, God's frequencies is not even in the frequency band.
Right.
So there's no way that they can, interfere with us. That's why we have to worship in spirit.
Right.
And in truth.
Yeah, and that's why putting our scrying mirrors away and tuning into God is so important.
Amen.
Not being focused on because my wife and I, we've been really talking about that lately, about not being on our cell phones all the time. It's so easy to do that, be surfing the net and I think it's really hard to completely disconnect yourself because there's things you got to do on there, pay bills, communicate with people for networking, for, job stuff. But really, it really should be between each person that they just need to pray that God helps them to have that balance where they're first. Like almost think about like when you get up in the morning, how it talks about seeking God early in the morning. That's so important to give God your best early in the morning before you do all this stuff. So easy to grab your phone even early in the morning and start doing your stuff. I catch myself doing that. I feel like, wow, I need to give this time to God, even if it's 10, 15, 20 minutes. Just to pray and talk to him and thank him.
Get on that frequency.
So that way he has the first of your morning. Like even if it's just a couple minutes first, do it first. Don't get on your phone first. Don't, whatever you do, coffee, just do first with God. Give God your first.
Well, and if you think about it, when he says that he's a jealous God, and anything above him, he gets jealous about.
Yep.
You bring him a good point, because if you wake up, because the first thing I do when I roll out of bed is I have to check my phone.
Yeah.
Because I get text, I get emails, I get this, and that's the first thing I do when I roll out of bed is look at my phone.
Yeah.
Immediately.
I catch myself doing the same thing too.
Well, immediately when my eyes open, I engage immediately on Satan's frequency. Mm-hmm. And I stay on Satan's frequency all day. And like you're saying, put God first. Yeah. You wake up praying to God. You get on God's frequency first. Yeah. Then you're, good point.
And it kind of balances you out because you're not just, because it's like you get sucked into the matrix and you just stay in the matrix all day.
Amen.
And it's like the technology's good, but like with anything, if you put it before God, then it doesn't matter what it is, it will become your idol. Mm-hmm. It just automatically does that without you even realize. Especially, I think when something's good that you're doing, that makes it even harder to recognize that something bad's happening, because what you're doing is not innately bad. It's not bad to open your phone and get on there and do stuff. But if that's the first thing you do, and that's the most important thing that you're given like you said, the beginning of your morning, you're given that first, you have to be real careful.
Amen.
Because it can totally become an idol. It can be. The scrying mirror, when you said the scrying mirror, I was like, that just burned into my head. So when I look at my phone, I look at it a lot differently.
The black
now.
mirror, yeah.
Right.
And we look in it to be
But that's what I'm saying.
hypnotized.
If you, like you said, you wake up early in the morning and you don't even realize
that you're
like,
doing it.
wow, you're giving the phone the best of the first. That's why the Bible talks about that early in the morning, seeking God early in the morning. Before you get into what's happening, you say God. Like you just give him that first. Like first fruits. Give God the first fruits. Give God the first fruits of your labor. Give him the first fruits of your time. I think it's so important. Even if it's just a couple minutes, give it first to God before you get into what you're doing. So
I agree,
that's what God's
man.
been kind of speaking to me about that.
That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. Sister Lisa shot us a link about a Russian state TV show map of potential U.S. nuclear targets. This I'm going to talk about next week because okay.
Give it some justice. To give it some.
Well,
time.
yeah, because there's a lot of meat on the bone about this. Okay, and there's a reason that this has happened. In a nutshell, basically, this has come out showing Russia targeting like 3 areas in the United States with a nuclear strike, but it's a propaganda video. And the reason being, like I said, I'll have to get into it next week because we don't have the time to lay out. But it's fascinating. Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to put this on the burner for tomorrow or next weekend because there's a purpose that they have done this, and it may deal with the sudden destruction that you were talking about. Okay, because it's a propaganda video. Man, I want to talk about it, but.
Maybe you could touch on it a little bit and then just say tune in next week, or I don't know if that's fair.
Well, it goes back into when the Russia, the USSR, was kicking out the globalist from Russia because they kicked the globalist out of Russia back then when the USSR collapsed, and that's why the globalists today hate Russia so bad because they've lost control of it and they want it back. And it does not. That's why they blame Russia for everything. So if they can put Russia in chaos, they can go back in and take it back. So when they were kicking the globalists out back in Russia back then, okay, there was a theory that has been spoken about. I've heard several people talk about it. One, including this week, I can't remember his name. I'll share that next week. But that America go over there in Russia and release chemical weapons in certain cities in Russia. And then once that chemical weaponry got out and people started dying, then they would throw the fear tactic on here. We need to, like the United States would be like, we need to do something about this because if that disease comes over here, it could start killing us. And so by nuking those areas in Russia, the heat from the nukes would burn all of that bioweaponry up. So by them releasing a chemical weapon would give them an excuse to go over there and bomb for our protection. See how that works? Okay. So apparently with this video that has been released, a lot of people are assuming that it could be, just saying could, I have no idea, a propaganda video showing 3 areas in our United States being nuked by Russia, because the theory is this is going to be the deep state's Hail Mary. If all of this starts crumbling down around them and Trump starts his purge on rounding up the criminally elite, that they would do it the opposite way. They would set off chemical weapons in 3 of our major cities. And then Russia would be like, hey, wait a minute. That could come over here. We need to nuke those 3 cities to burn up the deal, to burn up the bioweapons, and then that would cause us to go and attack Russia, and the deep state wins. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Checkmate.
so that's kind of what.
That's interesting.
Now
I never thought about that.
This is just theory. I'm not even stating this as fact. I could be 120% wrong, but that's what this is about. Now, the article don't necessarily say this, but this is what I have been. This is the word around the water cooler that we have been, discussing. So I don't know.
Interesting.
Conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
Something to think about.
I think too, what we were talking about, one of the things that Joe Rogan and Alex Jones were talking about is, especially Alex was saying how with some people, everything's a conspiracy theory. And you have to be careful, because I think everybody's interested in finding out, especially with stuff that kind of seems out there. You try to explain it away, or you try to not explain it away, but try to explain and clear out what could be the meaning of something. Because we know there's so many people in the deep state that are doing so many things, and it's such an exotic plan, to do so many, just an intricate, amazing plan to accomplish this world domination, that there's so many different avenues that they're going to have to go through to accomplish it at the same time. So you're always wondering, well, I wonder if this has something to do with the deep state, or boom, 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 boom. So you're constantly almost like looking at everything like it's all like the Matrix. Like, it's, the whole thing is a conspiracy theory, like church and God, it's a conspiracy. It's part of the people to control, like the whole Matrix. When you go to church, you feel it. When you go to, pay your taxes, you feel it. It's the system of control set up, to control you. And it's like everything becomes a conspiracy theory. So I think it's important to look into stuff and know, like we said, we just throw it out for food for thought. You pray about it, you look into it. So that way, because our desire is not to get you freaked out and scared. A lot of reality can do that to you, because it's pretty intense stuff that we're talking about. But if you approach it with the right attitude, with the spiritual attitude, like, and worship in spirit and truth, you look for truth and you have a truly open mind, you pray about it, it's not going to freak you out and fearmonger you. You're not, when you put stuff out, you want people to be aware of what's going on so that they don't become scared and panicked. That's the whole idea. Like Jesus said, I tell you the truth so that when this happens, your hearts don't fail. Like,
right.
You're not scared, because that's why I'm telling you. And that's I know it's your desire, and my desire is to put stuff out there so that way, if this does happen, like how we're saying it could happen, you kind of have some kind of idea maybe of who might be behind it or what it's all about. Like, because you've kind of thought about it already. Like a good director on the film set, when they're shooting films, they always have plan A, B, C, D. If it rains, if this happens, that happens. They're always thinking, well, what could I do? That's kind of our idea, is we want to put these different ideas out there, and then for you to do your homework, to pray about it, to look into it, that if something like that does happen, you've kind of already, you're ahead of the curve. So
right. And that's what it's all about. So 21 days, T-minus 21 days. We're down to 17 days now, friends. We got a peace treaty hanging in the balance. We have big things coming, okay? Pray up, repent, give your life to Jesus Christ. Because, Chuck, before we close, did you know that not 100, but hundreds of live fish rained from the sky during a megastorm in Malta?
I saw that.
The residents of Malta enjoy a free pick of seafood as they battled gale force winds and high waves during the storm. And this huge storm, it caused such strong winds that it rained fish across the island. And we're not talking about little fish. We're talking about big fish here.
Right.
Yeah. The gale force gust and heavy downpours coupled with the rough seas caused this unusual phenomenon. The devastating storm has caused major damage and disruptions on roads along the coastal areas of the Mediterranean island. This is not, I repeat, this is not an unusual phenomenon. This is the power of God showing us signs and wonders of the last days to repent and give our lives back to Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Tie a bow on this, old bud. Lead us in a prayer.
All right.
And then the show will be theirs.
All right. Dear Lord, I just thank you so much for today. I thank you for this opportunity to be on the radio, Lord, or the internet. Lord, I just pray that you would bless your word that was spoken. And Lord, if there's insights, Lord, that are from you, which we hope and pray that when we talk, that you're giving us insight, that it would help people's minds to be at least, triggered in a good way or inspired in a good way to look into these things that we're talking about. And if there's anything that would help people to not be scared and paralyzed by fear, Lord, when this stuff starts coming upon the earth, that you would just use it that way to people would be watchmen, Lord, that would be paying attention to the times, that wouldn't be just their mind set on this world. And this life is so short. We're only here on this earth for such a short time, and then there's eternity, and that just goes on and on and on, that we would not be those who have our minds set on earthly things, where we're just consumed with setting up a kingdom here on the earth, whether it be just having a house and cars and children, but we would have the bigger idea. We would do those things, and we would be good stewards of our children, our wives, our houses, cars, everything that's entrusted to us, but our mind wouldn't be set on those things, but we would remember that we live for you. We are, everything we do, whether we're working or taking care of our families, it's for your glory, and that know that one day we will be with you. And we want to be good stewards down here. That way, as we go to heaven, that we will be entrusted with the things you want to entrust us with, Lord, because we've been good stewards of what we have down here. And that we would live for eternity and not for the temporary things of this life. Lord, give us the spiritual eyes to see and to discernment, Lord, that we can understand the times and the season we live in, and that we would operate accordingly to your will, God, that we would be used by you, Lord, that we wouldn't waste any time or energy or resources on selfish ambition, Lord God, but we would use the gifts and the talents that you've so graciously, freely given us to accomplish your purposes on this earth, Lord, for your glory, Lord, and that people would get saved, they would get into a relationship with you, and they would accomplish all that you created them to accomplish. In the name of Yeshua. Amen.
Amen. Pretty good show tonight, old Chuck.
Yeah. I always like to do this because I always like to learn about all these articles. Sometimes I get so busy doing other stuff that if I didn't have the show, coming here, I probably wouldn't sit down and read all this stuff just so I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. But it's really good, man. It's such a blessing that God would use us to reach out to people, and to share these truths, and even just to kind of get their minds thinking about what's going on and looking at it from a spiritual perspective. So
yeah, and then sitting out on the front porch with your feet propped up, and
that's right,
and just bouncing ideas off everybody's heads. So.
Yeah, and no cursing.
Yeah,
I like to listen to shows, but that's probably one of my worst things. Is like, I like to listen to shows and just hear about what's going on without the cursing and the profanity, the mean-spirited attacks when people talk about stuff. So I think I like that probably especially the most too.
Yeah, and so this wasn't a Joe Rogan, Alex Jones style, but that's
Lord bless him. I appreciate anybody who puts truth out there and gets people's mind thinking. But it was really nice to be able to have stuff I don't have to filter through. So,
amen. All right, brother. Be in prayer for those we have asked prayer for, friends, Sister Julie and my dad, and let's see, I lost the name, Joan Knight. Friends, till next time, I'm Old Smokehouse.
And I'm Chuck Bird.
Lord willing, the creeks don't rise.
We'll be right back next week.
Next weekend.
Smokehouse. To talk to Smokehouse, dial 641-552-9354. That number once again, 641-552-9354. And enter access code 252380, followed by the pound sign. Call in and join the show.
SmokehouseStudios.net. God is among us. The door to the ark is slamming shut.